This week on the Shameless podcast.
And so within this entire space, you've had about 18 years where you were within Coca-Cola, where you're optimizing and running the strategic side of supply chain over 18 years, right?
Over 18 years, correct, yeah.
Within that period, that really fast-paced, dynamic, interesting, what is that highlight that you go?
I think there was never a dull moment. It looks like 2 years, but it was 18 years, It just tells you how action-packed it was, how exciting it was. And I think the moment you learn to enjoy the journey and flow with it, it just becomes exciting.
Now, to tie it back to leadership for us, right? Yeah. And the topic at hand. What are the things that are less glamorous within the space where you're trying to lead?
What you see, just it looks beautiful and glamorous, but you don't know the pain, the sweat that goes in building the brand. Nobody will ever tell you that there's a lot of tears, a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of questioning. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? There are things they don't teach you in school. The motivation for me was very real. How can I bring my global experience? Because Coca-Cola gave us world-class experience, world-class exposure. And I think that's one thing I must say for every leader. Exposure is everything. And so if you don't ask yourself the question, if you don't stand up as a leader, so many other people will fall. Or rather, so many other visions or so many other destinies will not be fulfilled. So I always tell myself, if not me, who else? If not now, when?
Sometimes we are afraid to do something. You fear shame. I don't want shame. We're trying to break that burden by sharing stories of courage, resilience, and we want to be able to celebrate your story.
Shameless.
Good day, wonderful people. My name is Dzikamai Gangaidzo, and I'm the host of the Shameless podcast. And today we are joined by none other than John Karani. John, how are you doing? Chairman John, how are you doing?
Excellent. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Not a problem at all. And it's a pleasure to have you join us today because I think it's not every day that we get to have discussions with supply chain professionals with vast experience such as yourself. And maybe for our guests, I want to name just one or two things that are within your portfolio in terms of things that you've done that can just set a stage for the topic that we have for today. So the topic we have for today is the dirty secrets about leadership that they do not want you to know. And why do we feel like John is the right person to talk about this is because he's accomplished as a Pan-African supply chain leader with an impressive 27-year track record, shaping procurements and supply chain across the landscape of Africa. And so within this entire space, you've had about 18 years where you were within Coca-Cola, where you're optimizing and running the strategic side of supply chain. And it started, please correct me if I'm wrong, it started as just as within Africa, and then it...
Actually, within Kenya.
Within Kenya.
Before it came Pan-African.
And then it blew 39 countries.
Exactly.
Gosh, that and over 18 years, right?
Over 18 years, correct, yeah.
Within that period, that really fast-paced, dynamic, interesting, what is that highlight that you go?
I think there was never a dull moment. It looks like 2 years, but it was 18 years, It just tells you how action-packed it was, how exciting it was. And I think the moment you learn to enjoy the journey and flow with it, it just becomes exciting. And I think I came from managing Kenya, then managing East Africa, then managing East and Island Africa at that time, which included the beautiful Mauritius and Seychelles, which is a good place to be part of. And then before broadening up to East and Central Africa, and eventually East, West, and Southern Africa, which came all the way from West Africa, and then Central Africa, actually, and then, of course, all the way to the belt, the 39 countries that's made up of I call it the equatorial type of Africa. I think there was never a dull moment. It continued growing, and I think the fact that I kept bringing more people to my fold, I was getting more responsibility every year was an exciting year.
And I guess the complexity of working across such Coca-Cola is notorious, is known everywhere, right? There's not a corner of any small village within any town where you won't find a Coca-Cola product. And that became your challenge of getting it out, getting that product with such a big brand reputation out there.
Yes. Yeah.
How
You know
was
what
that
you just said is what you just said is so important, DG. I should say DG now. Your name is too long. DK. It's okay. You know, the dream of one of our founding fathers, with Coca-Cola, one of the very early presidents of Coca-Cola, Jamaican guy, forget his name now, but I'll get it to you later. He says he thinks of the day when Coca-Cola will be within an arm's reach. He stretches his arm and he gets a Coke. And that is, the power of a leadership, that it could make us all think like that. How can we make Coke within an arm's reach? And I think Africa was call it the last frontier, the place where Coke was not found. And so for me, making sure that each country, and I've never forgotten the story of Somalia, where there was no Coke. And, we had to make sure Coke is produced in Somalia, Mogadishu, where there was chaos, There's no way in all my wildest dreams I could have thought one day we'll make sure there's Coke in Mogadishu. But, that was a dream of a vision of a leader. And that tells you leadership is everything. It all rises or falls within the leader. But the vision burned us, the vision dropped us. For us in supply chain was how can we make sure we have the right material, the equipment, the raw ingredients to make sure there's a Coke at the other end of the equation.
So, I mean, that's beautiful because without a vision, then that purpose becomes a lot harder to realize, to imagine,
Exactly.
to envision. But then, I mean, Coca-Cola in Mogadishu.
Yes.
Like, that just sounds like, and there's also just not Coca-Cola, it's Coca-Cola in an arm's length reach in Mogadishu.
In a glass bottle.
And just out of curiosity, just pure curiosity, what is the most difficult thing about that? Why was that so challenging for you?
Actually, to go there, you needed security. You needed security to be actually from the airport to your hotel room. You had a battalion of armed people guarding you. You feel like you're in a movie, and that to me was exciting because here we were, not afraid, with our big boss himself leading the team, and he was not afraid. He was there as part of the leaders that went from Djibouti not Djibouti, all the way to a place called Mogadishu, in the middle of nowhere. We made sure we had the bottles. Nobody wanted to do business with the Somalia, but we managed to convince them it's the Coca-Cola brand. So power of a brand. Branding is everything. But because there was a big brand leader that was able to say, no, we can do this. And so that became the foundation of Coca-Cola in the middle of nowhere. And today, you see, I think I've been out of Coca-Cola now more than 10 years, but I think Coca-Cola is almost in every country on earth, whether being produced or being distributed. That to me is the
And
power.
that is absolute power. And so, as you said, you've left Coca-Cola for 10 years now, and now you're driving a passion that you have within the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management. Is that right?
Yes.
KISM.
KISM that's correct. Yeah, that's the right name.
And maybe just, if you don't mind sharing just a couple of words around what that work looks like in your view, that vision that you have around supply chain within Kenya for KISM as well, and then what's this exciting journey that you're now on?
Before I go to that journey of Coca-Cola, I got to tell you the name of the Jamaican guy who made Coca-Cola really international. It's called Roberto Guizeta. Roberto Guizeta is the one who led Coca-Cola from 1980 to 1997. He really had a dream like Martin Luther had a dream. The dream that one day, actually it was beyond even within arm's reach, he had another one. He dreamed of the day when the tap in his room, when he will open the tap, it'll just gush out with Coke, So he moved from the dream of Coke within an arm's reach to Coke in the tap. And that dream, by the way, is actually there. Today, if you go, you can open Coca-Cola in many places. Just open a tap and there's Coke. It's a dispenser. No. So I think we owe a lot to that type of leader. And I think it's a case study of leadership. Roberto Guizeta moved as an immigrant from Jamaica, came and settled in America, and became an iconic leader of Coca-Cola that took Coca-Cola global. That to me is leadership. Coming fast forward to my life. So when I
No, but like because that was something that was outstanding because
outstanding,
you did say there's a leader, a Jamaican guy who's really done a lot. And so
yeah,
what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that we post a photo of
yeah, exactly. You need to give him that credit. I think it's that is a guy worth his every ounce of leadership. He built a true brand, in terms of Coca-Cola brand. And I think that's a guy to follow, to pattern after. It's a case study of what leadership, true leadership, visionary leadership, iconic leadership is all about. Okay, good.
yes.
Let me come to my story. So I went out of Coca-Cola about 2015 it was. I started my consulting company and I did quite well. I must say I got a lot of business leveraging on my Coca-Cola experience in supply chain consultancy, where I wanted to now say, how can I bring what I did in Coca-Cola into the consulting world to other companies?
Yes.
But 3-4 years down the road, I just got a clarion call that, here is our professional body. It's a company is actually run it's actually formed through an act of parliament. So it is a public sector institution. And I'm coming from a private sector institution background. I said, will these people even accept me coming from a private sector life? And now I want to run to be the chairman of the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management. But the motivation for me was very real. How can I bring my global experience? Because Coca-Cola gave us world-class experience, world-class exposure. And I think that's one thing I must say for every leader. Exposure is everything. They don't teach you this in school. There are things they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you. They teach you maybe strategic management, teach you about this boardroom dynamics. But guess what? In the school of leadership, there are so many things that they don't teach you that I call exposure. Exposure made me who I am today. And I think I owe a lot to Coca-Cola. They made me a global leader, and a truly global leader in that sense, because I traveled the world. I think I've traveled over 50 countries globally. I just sing and selling the gospel of, because of Coke, courtesy of Coke, to the funniest place called Macau or Vietnam or some really interesting places like that. People, things that I would never have gone to if it was not for Coke. So I thank God for the exposure that Coke gave me. And that is actually what I'm saying that to say, because when I now came to this passion for wanting to say, how can I actually bring all that experience, the global experience I've gotten over the past many years to contribute to the professionalization of my own profession here in Kenya. It's like giving back to my country, Kenya. And I think that was my motivation. How can I give back? How can I give back in terms of the experience I've gotten? How can I give back in terms of the exposure I've gotten? How can I give back in terms of the experience, the leadership experience I've gotten globally to bear on my country, Kenya? That is really what drove me to stand for office. It wasn't easy, and that's another journey I'll talk about later on. Public sector life is another whole totally different ballgame. In private sector, it is truly private because you can keep a lot of things private, but in public sector, the things you did and things you did not do will be you'll be accused of all manner of evil. And at one stage, I asked myself, is it me they're really talking about? And then you ask myself, is it really worth it? Why do I want to run for it in the first place? So I think that's the difference between public sector and private sector. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's brilliant because the question about is it really worth it? Now, to tie it back to leadership for us, right? Yeah. And the topic at hand, the dirty secrets about leadership that they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
What are the things that are less glamorous within the space where you're trying to lead? You're trying to lead the industry. You're trying to lead a group of people, teams. You're trying to lead the public sector into becoming a bit more efficient and, trying to share your exposures and the rest of it. But it comes in at a moment where you find yourself going, is it really worth it? Doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound glamorous. Are there any other examples, any other things, any other comments you want to say around those dirty things that are not so nice?
Yeah. Let me build on this because I think if you don't have the grit, the determination, and the vision that you've got something to offer that nobody else has, then you'll give up. You'll quit. Because what they do to you they literally undress you in the, literally in the real sense of the word, until you ask yourself, as I said, is it worth it? Because I was doing my quiet life in terms of the private sector consulting. I was happy. I was getting lots of money. And so you come into this limelight where people throw all manner of insults against you. And when you come from Coke or whatever, in life generally anyway, your reputation is everything. Your reputation is who you really. But they literally mess up with your reputation. They insult you. And so if you don't ask yourself the question, if you don't stand up as a leader, so many other people will fall, or rather, so many other visions or so many other destinies will not be fulfilled. So I always tell myself, if not me, who else? If not now, who, when? So you ask yourself that question and ask yourself, here I am. God has put me at such a place at time. You can see the momentum. You can see there's so much hope. So many people are actually banking on you winning, because they know once you win, you bring in a level of integrity, you bring a level of acceleration for the profession. And for me, to have come in at that level where we're about just 2,500 members, to today where we are 25,000 members, that gives me a joy in my heart that indeed, without making a lot of noise or making a lot of trumpet, we did something that was impactful. And people today in this meeting, as I told you earlier on, we had a meeting last week in Mombasa, we have elevated the brand of supply chain. It's not just about the people who want to cut shortcuts and get a little percentage. We have elevated the integrity, the professionalism. There's not just anybody who can buy. So what am I saying as you go back to the leadership secrets that you talked about? There's a lot of things that go in the background that nobody will ever tell you. The foundation, laying the foundation, doing the grit, the sweat, the blood and sweat you have to do in the background. What you see just it looks beautiful and glamorous, but you don't know the pain, the sweat that goes in building the brand. And for me, that is actually one thing that nobody will ever tell you. Nobody will ever tell you that there's a lot of tears, a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of questioning. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Is it? And you got people you're leading both within the institute where you are, who don't catch it. They don't catch the vision. Yeah. And they have what I call it, a wheelbarrow mentality. If you don't push, nothing happens. You get where you are. And for me, that effort, that resilience that you gotta develop, the grit, only you can do that because you're the vision bearer, you're the vision carrier. Once you have that that focus, that you know where you're going, you know where you're headed, you'll not be distracted, and you don't necessarily need to step on people. The mistake I did, and I must confess, is when I come from private sector life, the first thing I did was actually I did not quite feel this that the CEO at that time saw my vision. I did not sense that this guy will take me where I want us to go. And so the first thing I did was to sack him. Shock on me, the public sector, the private sector, they will take you to court. And so I spent almost 4 years fighting on a case which I knew this guy will never take it. I knew the guy had no intention whatsoever. He knew, and he told many people that this man will not stay here long anyway. Coming with a lot of, they say they come with a lot of passion, a lot of this, but they'll give up soon. So I knew this type of attitude will not take us where we are going. But what am I saying? Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No. So, the very interesting things about what you said. I've heard it so many times. This energy is going to, the system will wear. This place will humble him, and I think that is the challenge of being a leader. If you're not going to carry that burden of being worn down, who else is going to do it? But then you said that you almost started it as though it was a learning experience, as though there was something that you regretted in the way that you did that, or something you learned after you did that. Like, was it a moment that also sort of helped guide your transition and you grew through that experience? What happened there?
Yeah, what happened actually there is that I come in with this passion, with this sense of urgency that comes from the private sector background, and I come to this place where things are taken slowly, step by step. And the thing, and I think there's something about leadership generally. As a leader, you don't have that much time to transform an organization. You have your limited time. And there's something that is very dangerous in the public sector mindset, where you are permanent and pensionable, is a very, very dangerous thing, because it makes people lazy, it makes people just lackluster, it makes people not have a sense of urgency. I was appointed for a 3-year period. I knew if I'm to transform this place, I got to do a lot of internal rejigging. And so I realized that, I cannot deliver on my own. I need these people. I need to carry them along. I need to transform them for them to actually be able to see my vision and see my dream. And that's what I had to slow down on. I said, you know what? Right? If I ride these people the way I'm driving them, I'll kill all of them. I'll sack all of them, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to sack all. It's not that straightforward in the public sector. So I kind of had to slow down and say, can I bring a change agent? Can I bring somebody who can teach them about change management? And that's what I did. I invested in them, trying to bring them up. I can tell you, it's a very, very dangerous mindset. It's not just in the public sector, even private sector. Let them come, they will slow down soon, they'll give up soon, Yes. Very, very, this is how we have done it. What will they do? They'll come and go. They'll continue business as usual. But I'm really glad that you said earlier on, the thing I really wanted to plant into this mindset is what now called an entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurial spirit means, how can I make these people know that if it's got to be, it's up to them individually. It's not just something that's going to happen. Each one of us has a responsibility, sense of ownership, sense of responsibility. It's taken a long time, and I think now is my 6th year, is when I'm beginning to see that sense of risk. It's not yet there, but it's taken a lot of time. So what am I? The lessons you have to learn is patience. I thought I was a man, and I realized I was completely impatient from where I came from to the public sector. My patience was tested to the limit completely.
But then, so you talk about patience, but as part of that patience, did you also have to change the way that you led? I mean, and I think you sort of alluded to this, because not one size fits it all. Not one size fits this person versus that person, public versus private, even within the private sector. You have to be quite adept to your environment. So what is,
Yeah, it's what I call situational leadership. And as you move from one environment to another, you got to recalibrate your leadership style. Not every size fits it all. And I realized that the driven go-getter spirit of the private sector may not work in the public sector. So I said, if I'm on a coast-to-coast change, I got to slow down. I got to carry the people along with me, because you cannot sack all of them. Eventually, what I did, of course, down the road is that I was able to learn them, take them for training, and you realize that some of them may not be able to reach where you want them to be. I think there's an upbringing that you find that there's a limit. If you push them any further, you promote people to their level of failure. So what I had to do was bring another level of leadership, in this particular case, on top of what I had already. But I think the fusion was much easier. There was initial resistance of this new team. I'm not calling it my dream team, but I think there's a lesson to be learned in the sense that the new team has something to offer, but the old team also has something to offer. The two of them have to work together. And I think that idea of trying to measure your team, see what you need to do, and I realized there are some things I really need to bring on board. And that's what took me a while to do, to learn, to understand what are the gaps, and then I bring them in. And I think now I can go anywhere now. I'll be okay. They're gonna run this show.
They'll run. And so on another part of those dirty little secrets is, and I'm talking both from a leadership point of view, but I guess even on a cultural basis, that idea of being appearing weak, appearing though you're not in charge and you're not the man.
Yes.
How do you balance that ability to both listen, take on board, but also be firm and tough and to lead? And I mean, is it okay to show weakness? I mean, that's probably the first question I want to ask.
It almost goes alongside the word of vulnerability you talked about earlier on.
Yes.
And I realized that from where I come from, people perception to see weakness is so easy because I don't shout, I don't scream, I don't do all those things. And many people can take that to be a sign of weakness. But I can tell you, you don't need to scream and shout to show your leadership strength. And I think many people learn the hard way, unfortunately, because they thought because I don't scream, I don't shout, I don't do all that thing, it means you're a weak leader. But let me tell you, to show that you don't know everything is a virtue. Many people think they know everything, and I realize that that's something about leadership that you come up with. And if you come up with that thinking that you know everything, you know better, nobody will tell you any better. These people have been there. They know many things, by the way. They know many secrets, and they keep a lot of, and they will not tell you when you come with a know-it-all attitude. When you come with a know-it-all attitude, they let you fall by your own gun. But you have to have what I call, and I think this is a lesson for me. I don't know if it's a secret, but it's actually leadership humility. Leadership humility is something I've learned the hard way, that if you want to get to hear what really goes on in an institution, a small institution or any other institution you go to, you have to be humble enough to be able to listen, right across from top to bottom. And I could tell you that I reach a stage where even the smallest person on the sweeper can actually confide in me and tell me this and this. Why? Because they have the confidence that they can tell me something. They can tell me the secret. They can tell me what's going on there. And if you don't learn that humility, leadership humility, and I think that's what people think, that being abrasive, being up front there is about leadership. No. So being abrasive is actually, I don't even know if that's a secret or not. I don't think that will work. You need humility in leadership. You need literally leadership humility is what I want to call it. So, and that's what happened like that.
And that's beautiful, because I think it also touches now on some of those tips, right? So in terms of people trying to be a better leader, grow in their leadership journey, right? And I think you talked about earlier when we were having a discussion, you said selfishness and simplicity. Can you maybe elaborate why those two things are probably fundamental towards building and becoming a better leader, great leader?
So it's not selfishness, it's selflessness, right? You got that right.
Selflessness, not selfish. Selflessness.
It's selflessness, that's what it is. So the essence of that really is, how do you make sure you don't take all the credit for yourself? That's what self-management is all about. How do you make other people around you grow, and without you feeling like they have robbed from you? When you let other people actually take credit, give credit to them where they actually shine, but does not take away the shine from you.
Yes.
That's what, yeah. So, and I think that's what I found with many leaders. I think I've been, I have to tell you that I've changed in this place CEO 4 times.
Wow.
So it tells you I did not learn from the first time, but I kept thinking, no, I want somebody who can see my vision. I want somebody who can tell, who can actually there's something about authenticity, authentic leadership. That's something many people don't have. People, the word I told you earlier on is fake it till you make it. That's what I found real in many people. People pretend to be who they are not. And I think that's something that I really believe that when you're not authentic, it will eventually show. When you're a pretentious leader, it'll eventually show. And I think that issue of authenticity is a real leadership quality. I want to call it quality that you need in leadership, authentic leadership, which can be tested and proven over time, because authenticity will stand the test of time. But pretense is a facade that literally, can be removed very easily.
And so just on that, right? So I guess what you're trying to do is build a vision.
Yes.
Communicate that vision for others, and then have them act upon that vision, right?
Exactly.
And so why why have you struggled with finding the right CEO? Like, why has it taken so many journeys? And I know, you said you didn't learn from the first time, and you're mixed. You look, you think, you've got a pool of experience. So why, how does it not just resonate or click? What is it that you have come to appreciate through that journey of going through?
Yeah. So I realized that you cannot get a perfect person for a leader. So you got to find a way. You get somebody. There's a word I've learned, and I really value this. Somebody who has a teachable spirit, who is willing to learn. A teachable spirit is actually a biblical term. A teachable spirit is a very real thing. It's a very rare thing because many people are not willing to be taught to learn, and sometimes when that thing about what you call, I think, people see like you really don't know anything because of your humility, they don't get to learn, they don't get to appreciate. So I realized for myself that if I can get somebody, and I actually sacked somebody just like that because he did not have a teachable spirit. I said, this guy, there's nothing I'll do to change him. That to me is a completely a no-go zone. Somebody who is not willing to learn and thinks they know it all. That's it. And I got rid of somebody just like that. I don't even have that patience for somebody. I gave the guy almost a year, and I can tell you the teachability was nowhere to be seen.
But then, how difficult is that decision to make? Because you would have at some point you're just like, surely this is the right person, and to then be able to acknowledge a decision that you have made needs to be revisited. Surely that is a difficult space, but also the impact of that.
That's a very true saying you just said. To acknowledge that your decision was wrong and that you got to change it, you got to go again through. It's not easy, but I realize if I don't do it that time, is that what I keep telling you? I'll be bequeathing the institute with a very poor leadership, with an arrogant leadership. So you got to weigh what is the worst evil right here. And then I tell myself, I better take the hit right now, take the bite right now. I've been accused of changing CEOs so many times. But I think now people can see the vision, that there is somebody now who have gotten, who can see that vision. So I think it was painful that time. I got a lot of slack. I got a lot of hit. But I said, it's good to admit that I did it wrong here. I was wrong. I better get somebody else. And I did. And I did that. And I think it was tough in the beginning, but eventually they all forgot about it. And I think now they're happy and move on.
And then, good. Sorry.
Issue, let me just tell you about another real, I don't know how I call it, something that many leaders really forget. I'm going to call it self-awareness. Self-awareness and emotional intelligence. I realize when you're so full of yourself, you don't even know that you actually probably you're not the tree of knowledge. It just speaks to what I told you earlier on. Self-awareness is for me something that I found missing in many leaders, where people just think, everything revolves around them. They are not aware of their own strengths and weaknesses. They actually think only of their strengths, and they don't see that they actually have other things that they need to manage. So that self-awareness and emotional intelligence are crucial for effective leadership to actually build strong team. Because it's so easy to have a dysfunctional team, just like it's so easy to have a dysfunctional family. And what does that come from? It comes from a leader who is not self-aware, a leader who is not emotionally intelligent to sense and give credit to it. And I think I've seen that many times. It's a real problem, actually. I didn't want to forget that, but
No. And I completely feel that is something that, again, it's very difficult to show somebody who doesn't want to hear, right? So the ability to be self-aware at times is brought to you by somebody else putting a mirror in front of you, but you have to be able to listen. But then as well, yourself being able to reflect upon your own actions and decisions that you've made.
Exactly.
And it is, I don't really know. Some of these things you wonder whether you can teach them, or is it just a function of, But then now, and to talk about building of a team, right?
Yeah.
Typically, it's said great leaders delegate, right? And
Yeah.
you mentioned the idea of you're gonna have to carry the team on your back, right? But the reality is that you had to build a team that would carry your vision on their back, right? So how that journey of building that team, and you did touch on it, you refused the two. What was the new leadership and the older leadership that you had? What's the hardest thing about delegating in your view? Where you found it so difficult, or you still find it incredibly difficult?
That is a very good point. There's a saying I have in my leadership journey that work goes to where work gets done. And I realize that not many people are good at getting work done, and so I have struggled with that myself. And I can tell you, I think I have almost ripped the same thing now that I keep telling my new leadership team, please learn to delegate, and then they tell me exactly what you just said. Unfortunately, you're delegating to people who do not have the capacity or the capability to deliver. And so when you delegate to them, you still have to rework all the work from finished work. And I think that is a challenge in leadership journey, in that we are taught to delegate, all right, but how do you delegate work to people who you still have to rework the work, it was not. And so for me, I invested very intentionally in developing the leaders. I've done that to just telling the people. Today, I can tell you, I almost sit back. The conference we had this time in Mombasa was about 1,000. I did very little. I just gave the vision, gave the dream, gave the action. And I think it was a success, great success. So it tells me that I need to now go down below the immediate leadership and see, are there other people also pulling their weight? Are there, or is there some people who are being overworked here? And I can sense that. And I think that's what I want to call leadership presence, being able to see, even without being told, that there is something missing here. There's dysfunctionality. And I've been able to see that, and I think some things are working well, but some things are not working well. So the question is, how do I keep recalibrating the ship and ensuring that everybody's pulling their weight? Because that delegation is everything, I'm telling you. It is works wonders, but it's got to be done properly, but it's got to be done to people who are already able to deliver.
And I love that. And the beauty, why I love that, is that it's not about delegation. It's about building the capacity of the people you're going to delegate to. Exactly. So that you delegate to them, you've got a level of trust and they've got the capability to deliver. But just because the result of 1,000 people conference went well, you still feel and you still see that fundamentally there is a bit more that you need to support at a lower level.
Absolutely. I can see it. I can see it very well. And I think that having sensitivity, I don't know what the word is, but having the sense to know that it's not all that glitters that is gold. Here, there's still work to be done. Many people came out of that forum very happy. It was a great conference. But I know there's work to be done. There's still work to be done.
I mean, journey of moving from 2,000 to 25,000 members, right?
Yes.
Though you say there's still work to be done, obviously there's been a lot of great traction that you've had and great successes. If you were to pin it across a couple of things, which ones really helped propel your journey, your transition from Coca-Cola to KISM, from 2,500 to 25,000? What qualities in the way that you led helped you propel those numbers and that journey along the way?
Very good point, and I really like that question. And I realize that there's a sense that in which when I came into the institute, there's a sense in which KISM was seen as a personal property, belonged to an individual. And I think I demystified all that. I said, KISM is ours. KISM is not mine, as John Karani. KISM is ours, all of us. How can we build our KISM? So I kind of and that's what drove me the first time, actually. A sense of ownership from the members, where I build in what I call a member-driven institute. Member-driven means that This is not an individual's job, it's ours. We got to build a brand we can be proud of. Building a brand, that's a brand ownership. That's what I was looking for. I come from the world of Coke, which is brand centric, It's all about the Coca-Cola brand with a hyphen in the middle. If you do it any other way, that's not Coca-Cola. with the Spencerian script,
Yeah.
I said, how can we brand this institution? Because the accountants are very proud to be members of a certain institution. The other bodies are also very proud. So how can I make sure people are proud to be called supply chain professionals? So that brand equity or branding, brand ownership, brand sense of where people actually feel that this is their institution, as not an individual. And that's what they told me recently. They told me, we feel we have a professional body. We feel we have a body that can fight for us. We have a sense of belonging. So it tells you that there's a sense that goes back to the word I told you earlier on, selflessness. How can you don't tie the brand, the institution to you, tie it to the members? And I think that for me was a very big, it was easy for me. I think that's the background I come from. Coca-Cola is not my brand. It's actually owned some people who came up with it somewhere in Atlanta and now made it global. How can we make this brand, KISM, and I'll be coming to that later on, not just a Kenyan thing, but a Pan-African supply chain of excellence. I'll talk to you about that later on, because that'll be my closing shot.
So, and I am very curious to understand, I guess, in line with the closing shot, right? That brand of KISM, that journey, sort of where you're going to, what's that vision, that legacy that you intend to leave? Because I think one thing that you mentioned is that is leaving a legacy.
Yes.
Building on what was and getting it to a space that is more.
Yes.
How then, what does that look like for you from KISM point of view? But then how do you build that? I mean, what are you building?
Yeah. It's very clear to me. Sometimes the vision gets clearer as you walk the journey. It may not always be clear. The first 3 years of my term, I worked on three things. I want to call it membership registration, ramping up the membership of the people, and then I want to call it membership discipline, so to speak, and then membership welfare. So those three things. Discipline actually speaks to the need for compliance. How can we ensure that our members actually, whoever is, not just our members, anybody doing supply chain work, how can we make sure they actually register to become members? Because it's going to be what's in it for them, not just for the sake of it. And so when people see value in wanting to become a member of the institution, a sense of belonging, then they'll run to that. So the first 3 years, then after that, I came now to saying, how can I simplify the role of membership so that you don't need to wait for 2 months to become a member? Today, with the click of 3, 4, 5 minutes, your membership is generated, auto-renewed. That's a game changer. Automation. How can we leverage it, make it easier for us? And then the other issue is about around training or capacity building. How can we make our trainings relevant, speaking to the needs of our members? It's got to be, the word I always call is TNA, training needs assessment. It's got to be driven by the members. What do they want? What are the things? Many of them don't just want to learn about your normal procurement things. They want to learn about leadership. They want to learn about strategic thinking. They want to learn about things that soft skills, so to speak, such things that can actually make them navigate navigate the terrain. It's a very tough terrain. So there's a new word that I'm actually brought in very strongly. It's called leadership agility. It talks about mental agility, talks about emotional agility, talks about just the word I want to call it actually political agility. The thing about this arena called procurement, everybody's interested in it. Everybody from your CEO all the way to the bottom, because people think there's resources there, there's money there. How can you bring in integrity? How can you bring in professionalism to that work so that people know that's not just anybody who can do this work. It's got to take a level of credibility, integrity, a level of professionalism. You've got to know what you're doing. So that, and then I tell my people, don't just follow the law. You'll be, the word I tell them, you'll be sniped. There's a sniper. You'd be sitting there like a lame duck and you just hit. You don't know what hit you. So leadership agility, emotional intelligence, being able to discern your environment and see what are the dynamics going there. And I think that's something that nobody ever teaches you in school. That you go to do, you know, to navigate this and this. It's actually a very leadership agility is an integral part of any leader who wants to navigate the leadership boardroom. Because I talk about the boardroom and before I forget this one, there is something about leading boardrooms, leading other leaders. Yeah. And they got to do navigating those boardrooms. So there's always got to be a meeting before the meeting. You know, if you come to that boardroom and just think that everything as it is, you gotta rally like-minded. So there's something called a coalition or the alliance of the willing. So you gotta see. It's all about interest. Leadership, I found out, is about vested interest. And so I always look at the people who have the right interest for the institute. Many people are driven by selfish interest, by the way. So I come back to that word, selfishness and selflessness. Many leaders, unfortunately, are leading by what's in it for them. And so you got to raise people up. There are so many people who have what I call a hidden card, a hidden agenda that they don't bring on the table. So you got to know, you got to discern as you're navigating your boardroom here. You see who is with you, who is not with you. Then you make sure you have a side meeting and tell these people. You'll always have a critical mass of people who can see the bigger picture. And I think I've been lucky in that sense. It's not all of them. So having meeting before the meeting is a non-negotiable, where you actually you coalesce people who will actually vote for your agenda.
And so, and I think we've discussed a lot of things, and in sort of trying to wrap this up, I would like to firstly, because I usually do a quote of the episode, but before I do that, I want to just ask you whether there's anything in particular, whether it's a story or comment that you want to highlight before I give the quote of the day.
Yes, I got to do this. I forgot to tell you that you asked me this question, and I don't think I answered it fully. Where is our vision? Where are we headed to? Yeah. So what I wanted to reiterate on is that in KISM specifically, we have built what I call a foundation, a solid foundation in which we have been able to set the things that even long after I go, nobody can change them. The structures, the systems, the process of how the institute should run, the policies, the things. They can just calibrate them here and there, but the foundation is there. And so now I say, what's our next horizon? I keep saying this, that today we are 25,000, but I know that's probably a half of what we should have. We should be 50,000, so to speak. So I always say, what can we do now to ensure that the rest of the people who are not in the fold come in? For many people they think that's a big achievement, and it is. I don't demean that, but there's something about leadership in my journey, and I think every leader should have this, having a healthy discontent, a holy discontent, saying there must be more. How can we achieve more? How can we? There is a very dangerous thing that I always tell my leadership team and my staff members. There's a very dangerous zone called the comfort zone. It is deadly. It is completely deadly to reach a stage where called comfort zone, where you think you got it all done and so there's nowhere else to go. So for me, I am constantly challenging my team, challenging myself, what else is out there? And so today, for me, our next horizon is Africa. Africa is our stage. Africa is our aim. Africa is our goal. And I'm actually not just saying that as a dream, because when I always say there's something that happens when you have a vision, all the forces, including the heavenly forces, coalesce to make it come true. And so one of them is actually the dream I've always had of saying, how can I make KISM, or Kenya Institute of Supplies Management, the launching pad into professionalizing the rest of Africa, creating a curriculum, a vision that's central to Africa, Pan-African, the whole Africa thing. So I've been able, by God's grace, we got 5 acres of land in Mombasa, not far in the coastal region of this country, build our Pan-African Center of Supply Chain. Wow. That to me is a milestone. But the land is the beginning, but making that come to fruition is the next thing. So today, as I speak to you today, my vision of bringing together the rest of Africa, gotten already, yesterday I had a quote, 2 days ago, I call it South Africa, Nigeria, and Congo. I'm trying to see how can we set Africa to become the place where people come to for supply chain excellence. So we got the land, now we got to make the land become a reality. And that's my vision for what I'm driving for. That's what keeps me on my knees praying and on my toes running.
And that's absolutely beautiful. So and with that, I want to highlight the quote of the day of the episode, and the quote of the episode comes from Roberto. I can't say his surname. How do I say his surname? Guzetta, right? Roberto Guzetta, who you have hailed and you've shown us, given us wonderful examples of how the vision that he rose and put forward transcended into the way that you built and drove within Coca-Cola. So at the end, this is the quote: at the end of every day, of every year, two things remain unshakable: our constancy of purpose and our continuous discontent with the immediate present. And the reason why that resonated with me in terms of a story or a quote is because of how it sort of ties in with your own journey and story as well. And with that, it starts with obviously your Kenya Meat Commission, your work at the Kenya Meat Commission, where you went from slaughtering animals or slaughtering the cow, and you thrown into the deep end, go forth and create a supply chain industry. Though there was little to know about the industry, you then went up over and beyond, got the insight as an economist, and you started growing and building that ability and that understanding. And you really were, and the way that it sounds, out of your comfort zone. Beyond that, then you moved from killing the cow to milking the cow, and you moved over to the Kenya corporate creameries, right, where you essentially grew even further and beyond that, and really optimizing supply chain as a whole. Diageo, Smith Klein, or GastroSmithKline to really, and then getting to Coca-Cola. And that example that you provided, where nobody wanted to do business in Somalia, right? And you led by example with good leadership as well. I mean, the senior most personnel were there with you as you were expanding into horizons and spaces that were very uncomfortable. And that's that discontentment with where you were at the moment, even though Coca-Cola was across many countries and was doing really well. But it's that whole constancy of purpose, that purpose of you want to be able to pull your hand out and reach for a Coca-Cola, or open a tap and see Coke coming out of that, right? It's that you have to have a real purpose, but also a discomfort to just being stagnant. And so that's why, for me, when you talk about your view and vision of moving from Coca-Cola, the private institute, 18 years later, into a public sector, into KISM, right? That then has that greater goal of a greater impact on a more fundamental basis, right? And I think your quote is something along the lines of, how can you bequeath the legacy to the next generation? I said it wrong. I know I said it wrong. How does that go?
How can we bequeath a legacy to the next generation that can be proud of? You did right.
That they can be proud of. And at the end of it all, that becomes the real journey of a leader, right? Is how do you leave something, build something, grow something that not only serves for now, but doesn't serve you per se. And it's a selfless pour and a selfless venture into making something better. I love the idea that you bringing in the experiences that you had, and there was something that you said that really resonated. It's about those exposures. The exposures transcend all the theoretical aspects of what you've learned through at school.
Absolutely.
And for me, that level of exposure, or anybody with exposure, or the hunger to be exposed, has to come with it a level of humility. Because in the absence of that humility, we will fail to identify what we do not know. We will fail to have a teachable mindset. And we will fail to then be able to have that impact that we talked about. John, these are things that you all said. I'm just trying to summarize everything that you told me about being
you said it
great
better than
leader.
I said. You said it so beautifully. I wonder, did I really say that?
You were saying all of this, and you know the thing is, right? I love
Yeah.
it because you had something that was a very humble, very simple and private space. Until you
Yes.
went into the public place and people, quite frankly, undressed you. And
Yes.
you were in the limelight and your reputation was being thrown left, right, and center. But
Yeah.
in the end, you ask yourself, what is the purpose that I'm here for? Why am I actually here? And those hidden, dirty secrets that live within that idea of what a leader is. It's not the glitz, it's not the glams, it's about being able to be vulnerable, being able to have humility, being able to be undressed, but knowing the reason why you are in a place.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, if you do not stand up as a leader, if you do not stand up for what you believe in, for that vision, then who else will? And when will they? Because a leader knows that time is a virtuous thing and nobody ever has endless amount of time. If you're not acting upon something, if you're not driving something, if you're not learning, if you're not teachable, then there's nothing that you're losing out across the spaces that you're in.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I can go on and on. We've talked about the entrepreneurial spirit and investing in people so that you're able to delegate, and you're supposed to then be able to bring a true value of what authentic leadership looks like, so that it doesn't just is not for here and now, but it withstands the test of time.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the beauty of everything that you've talked about is that endless view of being discontent with today.
Status quo.
That view of being able to look for those opportunities of how you can do better, what you can do more for others. And even though you had 1,000 people come into your conference and it ran smoothly by you just giving a vision, you still look and you analyze and you say, there's something not quite there.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I would like to put forward to the people that are listening to this podcast, in line with everything that you've put forward, is what is that thing that we have become too comfortable with? How do we challenge ourselves as leaders to give more, to be more, and to unlock more? Because at the end, if we're not providing that space that people can become more, then we're failing to lead people into that space of legacy that we're trying to build. To your plot of land, to your vision that you have for tomorrow, Kenya's Supply Chain Institute, I wish you nothing but success, but I wish you the most uncomfortable journey of discomfort, but also pushing, struggling and dragging, lifting people. But at the end, you will not get 50,000 members if you do not go through that struggle. John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. I've had so many insightful things, so many beautiful stories. I think I've really enjoyed myself, and quite frankly, I feel as though this is just a start of an entire, like we could have talked for another hour if we.
Yeah, easy.
But it's definitely worth me coming back to you in a short time from now to ask you about where we are in the excellence of supply chain in Mombasa.
Right. You know, the story is an unfolding, it's an ongoing story. And I think we have good news to talk about very soon.
I really look forward to that. Again, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, DK. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to share my story. And I think you're such a good prompter. You prompted a lot of things from me. Thank you for that. And I think to have a platform like this, to be able to tell our story as individually, but as a continent, as Africa, to me it's a blessing. Thank you. Keep up the great work. God bless.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
This podcast is brought to you by Transformation Leader. You can follow us at www.t4leader.com.